This is a real story. Marvel is failing, or at the very least it's falling off, and it's falling off hard. We've seen the rise and fall of incredible characters, we've seen the satisfying endings to enthralling storylines, and we've built and let go our relationships to our beloved superheroes. And after an unfathomable span of success, Marvel has finally started to feel the pressures of diminishing returns and the poisons of pop culture decay. And despite how much money the studio is making, whether it be historically less than what they are used to or unimpressively more, and despite how little general audiences may care, Marvel is nothing like what it used to be, and we have unfortunately come to expect this. The creative ugliness of the Marvel universe has been shown, the storyline failures have been received, and the stale overgrowth shrouding this once wonderful gallery of stories is finally consuming in totality, revealing to us that the Emperor wears no clothes. But even then, there's always room for something incredible. Anyway, my name's Not Important, and this is Abominable Culture. Guardians 3 was amazing. That's what you'll hear from all corners of the MCU's fandom, but what about Guardians 3 has made so many of us feel so strongly about it? What makes a movie amazing, and what about this movie makes it so much better than what we've gotten used to seeing from Marvel? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is different. We needed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Marvel needed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and we know this, but I wouldn't go to the length of saying that Guardians 3 saved the MCU, and I wouldn't even say that it has repaired the damage done by the inadequacy of the last several movies. Truth be told, the bar that the Guardians 3 has reset may prove to do more harm to the current MCU than good, causing developing and slated movies to be larger letdowns than what they may have already been without the shadow that Guardians 3 is leaving behind. The Guardians did not save the MCU, but what it did do is it actually told a story. I mean, like, it was actually about something, and it reminded us of what Marvel is supposed to be. It made me feel, it made me cry, it made me laugh, it made me empathetically angry, and it wasn't just another serial story added onto the heap. Guardians 3 was a movie that felt like it was made by actual human beings. It didn't feel like unfiltered cyclical programming that we've gotten all so used to seeing. It didn't feel like a $200 million filler episode that we forced ourselves to watch only to understand the context for the next Marvel movie. Guardians 3 felt real. Guardians 3 is about the character's objective in the story and not their writers. There was far less fan service and more originality. It's more interested in what's best for the characters rather than the broader plot. It understands that the big and explosive plots mean nothing without the well-cultured and dense characters on the smaller scale. And unlike Doctor Strange, Black Panther, The Eternals, or Ant-Man, Guardians 3 didn't need to include, rely on, or burden themselves with the broader building blocks of the MCU. Guardians 3 was its own movie, and that's perhaps what allowed it to be so amazing. Again, it was actually about something, and the primary medium in which they chose to tell this story, and the same one in which we received these potent emotions, is through Rocket. This crass, super genius, anthropomorphized, borderline rodent has found his way into sections of our hearts and minds that we didn't know we still had open for Marvel movies, but here we are, crying over this family of misfits and the trauma endured by their raccoon brother. And family is exactly what these movies have all been about. Behind the well-placed and delivered jokes, behind the best CGI in years, behind the Chris Pratt charisma and some of Marvel's most intense and graphic scenes, this movie is about life after tragedy. It's about misfits and orphans, the beaten and the damned. It's about a ragtag team of galaxy defenders finding enough hope and love left within them to choose to trust once again, gambling on a leap of faith that by the end they will have earned a family. And it's about friendship, about the family you choose becoming the family you never abandon, and the one that never abandons you, no matter how conditioned you've come to believe otherwise. Yet it's about loss, and the acceptance of that loss, the acceptance of that risk, and knowing when it's time to open yourself back up to that risk. The risk of losing it all again because you know there's always a chance. There's always the fear of loss because that's what life is. It's loss. It's losing the loves of your life, the opportunities to create more memories, and the chance to say goodbye. Yet true acceptance is knowing that the burdens of loneliness will forever outweigh the sorrows of that loss. And the vulnerability it takes to get there is the only leap of faith that will ever bring you closer towards everything in life you stand to gain. And that's the exact message delivered through Rocket's backstory in the entirety of the Guardians trilogy. For Rocket, his life, although he was unaware, was forfeit. His life was always meant to be expendable, to be thrown away once his obsolescence outweighed the inconvenience of keeping him alive. This is the human experience. Whether it be you, myself, or even this fictional raccoon, we all every day must wake up and find a way to be valuable. We must find a way to earn our place in a world which needs not promise you any love. And that's why we are always searching for people to love us. We are always in need and in want of love, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. Conscious beings want to be loved, and that's what Rocket had. Love. And for a moment, it was untainted and unconditional. That's what Quill had. Drax, Mantis, they had a place in the galaxy to feel love. And before Rocket realizes the horrors he's been put through, before he realizes the neglectful and abusive childhood he's had, he was happy. And that is like so many kids growing up happy, not knowing that they are living through neglect, not knowing that they are living through abuse or poverty. This is the story of childhood innocence being stripped away from underdeveloped minds. Like all of us, Rocket was cursed with his consciousness. Without choice, he was forced to behold his existence through his own objective internal monologue, and this is the greatest struggle of the human, to live a life of unconsensual conscious comprehension. And with that comes innocence. And for Rocket, that was him being able to run around and play within a locked cage in toxic conditions, surrounded by those who truly love him, and that love was never a question. Like a child who's born to emotionally homogenous parents has yet to learn anything other than what he's lived through, Rocket has yet to learn hate, deceit, betrayal, anger, or sorrow. Rocket is innocent, making his juvenile years of slavery to be normal enough to actually enjoy and find love because he knows no other life. Rocket had a family, the only loves he's ever known, and it was pure, not yet tainted by changing times and unavoidable tragedies. And that's why it hurts so much to see his first tragedy play out on screen, to see his innocence taken from him, to see his unrestrained wailing after him witnessing the murder of his family, comprised of children who just so few hours ago were playfully romping and laughing and planning out the dreams of their future, to see the sky, to taste freedom, to love, to have friends, to make something of oneself, to have a name. And whether you believe this to be a metaphor for the tragic rebirth from adolescence to adulthood, a metaphor for the heavy traumas administered by unfit parents and inhumane circumstances, or a metaphor for the unavoidable and tragic turnings of life's swinging pendulum. No matter what you believe this story represents, a poetic story with nuanced messaging, or a string of traditional story elements told through CGI animals, either way, it was powerful. And this theme of the misfit black sheep finding his or her place in the galaxy is in essence the grand message of the Guardians stories and the characters within them. And its power strikes through the borders between all the Guardians movies, showing us how much heavier the stakes always were. Rewatching Rocket lose Groot in Guardians 1, listening to Yondu confront Rocket's attitude, the overall fear we see Rocket harbor in not wanting to open himself up to the team, and fear that he may lose them too, and in order for him to protect himself from that pain, he removes the chances of ever again building loving relationships. His defense against pain, like so many others in reality, is loneliness, because as long as you choose loneliness, then maybe it won't hurt as bad as when loneliness is thrust upon you. But that is wrong. This entire trilogy, like I said, is about life after tragedy, but more so this entire trilogy, the entire story of the Guardians and everything they've been through, every lesson the team learns and every line of dialogue spoken and every plot line seen through is and always was about Rocket. And yes, each character has their moment by the end. Each of them complete their story and benefit from the messaging from each film, but not as deeply as Rocket does. In Guardians 1, we are introduced to Rocket's fears and his sensitivity to what he was turned into, and towards the end, we watch him lose his Groot, his best friend, but that loss forced him to try again with the Guardians, to try again to build a family, to try to find love. And in Guardians 2, he starts to come to terms with his problems, with everything that is psychologically wrong with him. He fears he's not enough, he fears his vulnerability, and he hides it all by being brash, angry, and mean. But we start to see through that, and so do those that love him. And this all starts to bring so much more meaning to the lines, "I'm sorry. I could only afford to lose one friend today. And he didn't chase them away. Even though he yelled at them, how he was always mean, and he stole batteries he didn't need. Well, of course not. And my beloved raccoon, this story has been yours all along. You just didn't know it. And after that, Guardians 3 speaks for itself. Rocket, Quill, Drax, Gamora, Nebula, Mantis, and even Groot, they are all misfits dying for a place to belong, dying for a family, dying for love. And how poetic is it that once they find each other, they live on a place literally called nowhere, because that's where they all feel like they belong. Nowhere. And that's where they'll always find each other, because they need each other. And this movie was actually able to deliver that message without it being overbearing or without it feeling rushed and filled with unrelatable and cringy dialogue or the quintessential forced jokes in Marvel movies that we have all come so accustomed to making fun of. And each team member had an actual role to play. They each got their moment. There were actual character arcs not only within this movie but within the trilogy that met their satisfying conclusion at the end of Guardians 3. After losing Yondu, killing his father, learning the terrible fate of his mother, and coming to terms with the death of his Gamora, Quill went home to face the past he was avoiding. Gamora found love with the Ravagers, which her father never truly gave her. And Nebula, after being cast away and unwanted by her true family, found a place where she is needed by the people she is helping to lead. Drax, after gruesomely losing his family, has been given another chance at fatherhood. Mantis, after living her entire life as a slave to a selfish god, has finally sculpted her own future. Groot is being raised by a loving community, and Rocket has built the family he's always needed. And yes, this is what makes me cry. Not because I'm sad, but because I'm nostalgic. Because now more than ever, I want to be included in their journey. I want to know where they are going. I want to know they're okay. I want to see all the moving pieces of their lives because they matter to me. And if they didn't matter to me before, then they definitely do now. Aside from No Way Home, Guardians 3 has been the most emotional movie for me. Not because the other movies lack emotion and not because it had the saddest moments, but because the future of these characters are unwritten. We are not used to seeing Marvel movies end so solidly with completed characters, because in the other movies, we know what to expect. We know something is going to happen next. We know that the story will be carried on, but not here. Not in Guardians 3 and not for its characters. Nothing is certain. We really felt like we were saying goodbye to friends, and it was painful. So yes, Rocket's story is what launched my tears, but the uncertainty of the characters' futures, which I will not be a part of, is what truly drove it home. James Gunn throughout this trilogy has found a way to make me feel like I'm one of the Guardians, and because of that, I truly feel like I'm losing the ties to real relationships. I, like the other Guardians, must now try to find myself out there in the cosmos, as if like them, I too am saying goodbye to family. And we know this is the intention because James Gunn said it himself by not only literally telling us, but by revealing it through the audience being able to hear Groot in perfect English, which symbolizes that we have spent enough time with these characters and with Groot for us to actually understand his language the same way the other characters didn't understand him until they spent enough time with him. Guardians 3 is amazing, and it ends what many people are calling the best trilogy in the MCU and the best third movie in the MCU. This is the home run that the MCU needed, and with its outstanding reception, I hope this movie has opened the eyes of the MCU to what the audience is looking for. To make movies just like this one, yet find ways not to turn them into carbon copies, which they've continuously fallen into doing. We want real stories again. I want real stories again. And of course, I don't think that the MCU is falling off for lack of trying, but I do believe that their poor decisions and honest mistakes mixed in with real world tragedies and accidents is starting to push their fan base further and further away, and the numbers are showing this. But Guardians 3 is a more mature and darker theme movie that has resonated with all demographics, and this is what we've always needed. Higher concept movies that treat their audiences with respect. Movies that don't feel like a uniformly built money grab with the occasional explosion and carefully groomed political and cultural checkboxes. And the Guardians trilogy has proved that we don't need household names like Spider-Man to sell movie tickets. We don't need the big names and characters to successfully tell a good story. James Gunn has proven that it can be done. That you can take nobody characters and make them into fan favorites. And with Marvel struggling to find the new face to their MCU, now would be the time to let go of the fan service and clunky plots for a more passionate story. Now is the time. I'm on Marvel's side. Truly, I am. I want them to succeed. I want them to continue making amazing movies, and I want to see how far we can push this universe. I want Marvel to win, but they're not. Not right now, and God, it's noticeable. I don't know if they'll be able to come back from this. I don't know how much money they need to lose or how many bad reviews need to come in before they either do a complete overhaul or shut down for good. I don't know how much it will take for anything like that to happen, but I do know this. If you liked Guardians 3 even just 1% more than the other Marvel movies you've seen in the last few years, then go out and watch the movie again. Get your friends to go. Watch it more than once and support the stories you love, because that's the only way Marvel will know what to do. If you want to see more stories like Guardians 3 and you want this to be the direction Marvel goes down, then support it any way you can. Because at the end of the day, it's not Marvel who decides what movies they make or how they make them. It's not Disney, it's not Kevin Feige, and it's not any other big name or corporation that chooses where these stories go. It's the viewer. It's you and it's me. We decide what happens by either supporting it or not. So I don't know if Marvel will be able to fix themselves, but I do know that with stories like this, there's still a chance.